Yo, what's going on, everyone? It's Brian and Jim here with DrinkABeerandPlayAGame, and today we are reviewing Toejam Earl, Panic on Funkotron.
Yes, the much maligned sequel to the cult classic original doesn't deserve all the hate it gets. Let's find out.
It doesn't.
No, it really doesn't.
It's kind of like Zelda 2, Jim.
It's a black sheep.
Let's find out.
What? Released in 1993, this was developed by Johnson Vorsanger Productions and published by Sega. It's the sequel to the cult classic original, as we've already said, and it is a game that you will either really like or really hate, depending on how much you love the first one. It's a Sega Genesis exclusive, though it did eventually come out on the Wii Virtual Console in like a few collections. It's really not as passed around as the first one was.
So it's not like your mother?
I don't have any other transitions, so let's just go with that.
The graphics. As you can tell right off the bat, this game departed from that whole isometric 2/3 on a 2D plane, all that bullshit, and just took you to a simple side-scrolling game. But it maintained the character of the original game. There's a lot of vibrant colors. There's a very goofy setting. This time you're on planet Funkotron, and you're no longer on Earth, but Earthlings are now here, and they look just as ridiculous, and sometimes I don't even get how this is an Earthling. There's supposed to be a random boogeyman. Not exactly sure how that's an Earthling, but that's besides the point. This game looks...
Brian was an Earthling in the first one!
Yes, and I didn't get it in that one either, Jim. Doesn't mean it makes sense.
Ice cream truck.
Thank you, Jim. Go eat your burger.
Yay!
But honestly, between the parallax scrolling...
Nom 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 nom. Ow!
As I was saying, between the parallax scrolling, the ability to switch over to this Funko scan, which allows you to see things in different colors, and this game, almost everything you come across, you can inspect as you look for these gifts or anything that can help aid you through the game. And I really like the amount of detail put into it. The problem is, at a certain point, everything just sort of repeats, even your enemies. So, when it comes to scores, I gave it an 8 and Jim gave it a 9. When it comes to beer, I'm just going to add 1 because I really love the amount of detail they put in these games. I just wish they didn't make it 17 levels so they could have really made each level completely unique from one another.
The sound. This game in a lot of ways is really an improvement over the original. For one, you get way more music tracks in this one than you did in the original game. Because of the nature of the roguelike, they had to repeat only a certain set amount of music, where in this one, straightforward action platformer, a lot more music tracks you can throw in there. Now, some do repeat, like the underwater level theme, and the theme from the first game comes back, and, you know, certain tracks repeat, certain older songs make an appearance here and there, but for the most part, the music's really well done, and the quality on it's pretty good too, especially for a Sega Genesis. Sound effects are also a lot cleaner this time around, so that's nice. I mean, the humans are still purposely annoying sounding, but it's just not as grating as it was before. I guess if you really want to nitpick, like, some of the music tracks are obviously going to be better than others, and some of the sound effects really do get annoying, like the dogs and the cheerleaders are just, after a certain couple levels, you just really wish you could never hear them again. With that being said, Brian gave it a 7 and I gave it a 9, and when it comes to beer, you just need 1 beer for those somewhat annoying sound effects.
The control. As Jim mentioned, this is an action platformer, so the essential goal of this game is moving from left to right, and there's only a few times where you really need to time your jumps perfectly, and that is honestly the first area where I have an issue with this game, because while the actual input is only a little bit delayed, the actual jumping is just, there's a floatiness to it. It's almost like you're in a different planet, which I guess technically you are.
Wow!
So either these guys are brilliant or it's just a design flaw. And I'm just going to go with that. Because otherwise, you're going around, you're exploring items, and the use of when you have to throw the jars to catch people, that actually responds fine and it's fast. Which makes me still think that jumping is just kind of goofy. The other thing I didn't realize, on certain later levels, you need to jump much higher. I went through the entire game without needing to do that, so I never actually realized you have to hold down in order to jump higher. So it drove me friggin' crazy. I almost hate when you have to do stuff like that. Like, I wish you would just do a double jump instead of doing goofy shit like that, especially when you're on a Genesis and you have 3 buttons. And then, of course, there's the special items. Now, we all know the Genesis is majorly flawed because it's standard, only came with 3 buttons, and most people did go to a 6-button controller, but the way you had to use your special items is by hitting start or select, and then selecting the appropriate special item. It could just really slow down a game. If you had a 6-button controller, those buttons were now mapped to the other 3, and it was never a problem. Honestly, because I wasn't thinking much, I just used a 3-button controller and it just slowed down all the action and made the controller a lot more cumbersome than it needed to be. So, with all that being said, when it comes to scores, we both gave it 7s. And when it comes to beer, I'm gonna add 2 because it's Sega.
Damn it! The gameplay. So, like we said up to this point, this is a big departure because it's a straight-ahead action platformer. The developers wanted to make a game in line with the original, but then Sega was like, oh no, you're making something that'll sell this time. So, that's the direction they went with. A lot of people today, like, bitch at them and call them, like, you know, it's disappointing they sold out back then, but shut up. You wouldn't have had a game then. Either way.
Make your own damn game if you're gonna bitch that much.
Well, I mean, it's what they did with the 4th game.
Bitch!
Damn it. So, but back to brass tacks here. When it comes down to it, this is an action platformer. You're going left to right through 2D levels, and the main goal is to go through every level and to find all the Earthlings, to capture them, put them back on a ship, and ship their asses back to Earth. How you do that is with your standard jars that you use to throw at them, and stronger enemies take more jars. Makes sense. And of course, you will have special jars which can one-hit people. You have a huge vacuum cleaner that can suck everything up on a screen to save your life. You can hit a panic button where you just start going crazy and throwing jars all over the place. Cool stuff like that to really help you along your journey. Every level isn't exactly the same, though, because, you know, there's a lot of exploration to go. They're very vertical and, you know, there's all kinds of secrets left and right. So you have to use your funk vision in order to find all the secrets, which some of them can lead you to different areas you couldn't get to before, some of them lead you to shortcuts, and some of them lead you to the special pieces of Lamont, who's basically the head of Funkotron. The more Lamont pieces you get affects the end of the game, but we'll get into that a little later. But while you're on your journey, they just added a lot more to it. Like, they added the function of putting coins into coin slots to make you search around for buttons to push that could either give you presents or tell you where Earthlings go or give you like a direction in which way to go, or a bubble to help you get to harder to reach spots. There's little mini games inside here too, like you can go on these fungi and try to do tricks on them, Tony Hawk style, for more points. And if you get a good enough score, they might give you a present. Or you can do the Funk Off dance battles, which are, you know, it's kind of like Simon Says, but it's a fun little distraction. You can win prizes again, all that stuff. My biggest problem with this game is the fact that they keep the spirit of exploration, but how they do it in this one is they give you trees and they give you rocks to look under. They give you so much stuff that you have to look through, where you're going to be spending so much time, unless you know exactly what you're doing, looking through every single tree, and it really bogs the game down at times. And also, it can be a little cryptic because sometimes you just won't know where the hell you need to go next. It's kind of easy to get lost in this game. So, again, it's going to take playthrough and a lot of trial and error until you really find, you know, where that last goddamn human's at before you can get out of a level.
Would you say this game is as long-winded as you are, Jim?
Yes, much like me, this game overstays its welcome, so we both gave it 7s. And when it comes to beer, I'm going to add 2 beers. 1 for the game overstaying its welcome, and 2 for it adding all these new elements to the franchise, which a lot of them do carry over into later games.
The originality. Unfortunately, where this game thrived with the first title, it really falters here, because it plays off all the same old shticks of goofy human characters, the characters you've already come to know and love, Toejam and Earl, the sound, like everything there you've seen before. Sure, it is a departure from that original roguelike style, but this is only the second game, so it's not like anything was set in stone. As Jim mentioned, you do have unique special powers with like the Funko-Vision and everything, but we feel like games like Bart vs. the Space Mutants had a version of that. And even the other special powers, enough other games have offered it. So because it did try to take the game in a different direction, and just the level of exploration and some of the unique powers, we could only give this game 3s. When it comes to beer, I'm only going to add 1, because maybe that's one of the reasons people were so let down, because that first game was just so original, and this just kind of squeaked by with just changing up the gameplay style.
For playability, I can keep this short because you get multiplayer, so it gets an automatic 5 from us, and you do get a very small amount of different endings depending on how many pieces of Lamont's, his items that you find throughout the world. So if you find all of them, you get a perfect ending, and, basically it goes down from there. So with all that being said, we both gave it 7s, and when it comes to beer, I'm just gonna add 1 for the nice touch of them throwing in different endings.
So overall, Jim and I, we actually prefer this one over the original. I know a lot of other people might not share that opinion, but it was just more accessible, it was a little better fleshed out, and the sound is much better this time around.
Yeah, when it comes down to it, this is more of an actual game. There's more actual gameplay to it. Is it generic? In a way, yeah. And was it a misstep for the fans of the series? Of course. But when it just comes down to it, the first one, if you grew up with it, then yeah, sure, fine. You're going to love that one more. This was the one I grew up with, so it seems to be the thing where the only people who like this game were the ones who grew up with it. But Brian here, he's a special case because he didn't grow up with any of these.
Yeah, and I just don't like walking simulators. So
simple enough.
I just like games that have more of a purpose.
Yeah, I think it gets a lot of unnecessary hate. But maybe people fanboy too much about the original one in a lot of ways. But, I still like the original, but I always if I'm going to pop one of them in, it's going to be this one.
Yeah, so when it comes to scores, I gave it a 7, Jim gave it an 8, and when we round it all together, it rounds out to a 7.2. Like Jim said, it's pretty generic, but in that universe of Toejam and Earl, to me, it plays like a better game, and there's more to do as far as action-wise.
Oh, yeah, for sure. If you want an actual game with stuff to really do, this is the one for you.
Yeah. So, leave us a comment below, guys. Let us know if you prefer this one or the original, or if you've even ever played it. But until next time, cheers. When it comes to beer pairing, I decided to go with the Deschutes Fresh Haze IPA. Like most hazy IPAs, this beer has a ton of citrus, but it goes down really smooth, and you're going to need something like this to get you through this goofy-ass game. So grab a 6-pack, sit back, and enjoy. But remember to drink your beers and play your games responsibly. As always, guys, thanks for checking out this video, and if you enjoyed it, make sure you give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, or better yet, why not subscribe? Till next time, guys, cheers.